Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. It is The Last Word, a Chrisman commentary weekly soap opera. Welcome, Christy, Courtney, KP from Mexico. He'll show up here in a minute. There he is. KP.
We're all jealous of KP.
Yeah, right on.
Are we? He's not
Aim higher. Yeah, aim higher.
I was just thinking that, as the rest of us sit here in our offices with our standard background, did you see that beautiful sky that he had? I'm jealous of the beautiful sky.
We've got a Cancun sky in Detroit right now.
Yeah, it is our company's president's cabinet. We all go home tomorrow, so but I didn't want to miss the show. I don't like missing the show. So carry on.
Well, here we are, guys. It is I just, it's like I looked up and it's the middle of May. Can you guys believe how fast the calendar is rolling through?
No, I can't. I did the same thing this morning. I picked up my favorite book that I read all the time. Calendar of Wisdom, Tolstoy. It's great, got every day in it. And my last time I picked it up was October 8th. And I was like, it was in the back of the book. And I picked it up today. I was like, holy Christmas, it's May.
Yeah. Lots going on, right? We're kind of in the last swing, I guess, of the spring conference season. The NBA secondary kicks off this weekend, Sunday. I know you two are going there. KP's probably going. I'm a 50-50. It'll be a game time decision, probably sometime Sunday if I'm going to go or not. We've got what else is coming up? We've got yesterday, United Wholesale Mortgage hosted 6,000 originators from the broker channel in Pontiac, Michigan. I got to participate in a pre-game event for that on Wednesday, which was cool, hosted by Safe Trust Mortgage. In 2 weeks, EPM, Eddie Perez's company, is hosting the American Gift event at Mercedes Stadium or Arena, whatever they call it, in Atlanta. Another NBA event, MISMO Summit, is in Boston in June, and then the Florida Mortgage Bankers is hosting their annual Eastern Secondary in June. I'll be there at the same time that Housing Wire has the Gathering. And then I think after those two events, I think we go into the summer resting period for the industry. So lots of events on the horizon.
I like the idea of a summer resting period. How does one sign up for that?
Well, yeah, in theory we get that. That's right.
That's because we're so busy with actual work. We can no longer go to conferences.
Same, girl, same.
Okay.
I was telling Brian that we have folks that are just to make sure that we have extra notices to consumer. We have people that are stuffing envelopes at my office today to make sure that there's a paper and a digital version of things. And I thought that was kind of cool that they all went in and they're like, no, we really do want to send it paper too, not just email. And I was like, go do it.
Well, I love conference season, as you guys know, but it's always nice to have a break. So, yeah, Brian, you and I think are going to both be at Eddie's thing right after NBA chairman. So I get home this Friday, and it's the last day of school, the last time all four of my kids are under one roof in their lifetime. 6th, 4th, 2nd kindergartners. So the summer shit show begins.
All right, let's just do it. I did not come into this with like any kind of prepared notes, so shame on me. But Christy, you spent some time this week at an event with some of your credit union folks. Anything that came out of that event that's would be newsworthy, noteworthy, and discussion worthy for us?
Well, they did an interesting section there. So, it's a smaller group. Think of it as a round table of people all in the same chair. And there's about 15 of us that go and get together. And what was really interesting was the cohesion around the topics. There's a sense, and we're seeing it in the mortgage space and in the other lending spaces, that rates are what they are. and this is the market that we're going to be in, and this is going to be a challenging market from just a political standpoint and change that's happening as it is with many changes in administration. But the focus is, hey, how do we win in whatever it is we're doing? How do we look at the regulatory environment? How do we look at AI? And a lot of really great conversation on how are we better serving, in our case, members in the midst of economic turmoil and uncertainty. You know, what do they need? Where does technology play a role in that? Where do different vendors, have the opportunity to be really partners in that? And it really kind of boiled down to one word. And, $1 if you can guess it, or a candy bar, or I'll buy you a cup of coffee. What do you think the one word was?
Profit.
Well, that's a good one, but no.
Oh yeah, your credit unions. You guys are non-for-profits.
It was affordability. That the number one topic that comes up again, not just in housing, but in vehicle purchases. Vehicles have gotten to be inordinately expensive. And with where rates are, it's having an impact on everybody's day-to-day economics, right? Not the worldwide economics, but your day-to-day, your own personal pocketbook. And so with interest rates being higher and people having credit card balances and student loan repayments, people are really worried about affordability in all aspects of their life, regardless of the channel that they're coming in to talk to you by. And so just having some empathy for what's going on in someone's life. You don't know what it is that they're dealing with. We say that all the time, but that word affordability just really kept coming up over and over again.
Bankruptcy filings are up too, right? So consumer spending is up, bankruptcy filings are up just from a total data perspective. And bankruptcy filings are usually an initial indicator of, I'm not going to say a recession, but recession-like things, right? Consumer spending, same thing. And so people have played the game of spending however which way they've needed to, likely. And some of them are reaching points where the dam is breaking a bit.
What's interesting is you're starting to see some, we saw rising delinquencies, and you can see that in all the data. And now you're seeing it start to plateau off and maybe even decrease. And you don't want to call, 1 month a trend. You just want to cross your fingers and hope that continues, both for what it means from CECL provisioning and that kind of thing, but also what it means for individual consumers, that if they're able to pay their bills better, then something is getting worked out right at the national level, and hopefully it's trickling down to individuals in their pocketbooks.
I was listening to Odetta from FAMS at an event a couple of weeks ago, and when you layer in the concept of, and this is going to make me sound like a smart economist. I am not smart or an economist in any way, shape, or form like these people. But when you layer in the concept of human insecurity about the job marketplace in and of itself, and that the quitting your job, the quits data is way, way down. People are less likely to leave their jobs right now, even for potential better opportunities, because of volatility in the marketplace. I won't say the T word, just like insecurity about
uncertainty, right?
Uncertainty. Yeah. About 2025. Thank you. That's a better word. See, not smart. I think that it's really interesting because you also aren't seeing people that are feeling like they can exercise self-help, which obviously impacts our industry because we sell loans associated with, the let me upgrade you, right? New house, new this, new that, right. And certainly for these folks like me that have a 2.75% mortgage, right? Even if I want to move, would I right now? I don't know.
I did. I traded my 2.5% mortgage for something that is not 2.5%. I would love to have it. I wish that mortgage had been portable, but it wasn't. And I did it anyway and took a new role that I'm obviously very happy with. Though I got to say, I closed on my house this week, sold it to a wonderful woman 3 kids, single mom. And she was super excited to be in the house, her parents, it's always great. Georgia's one of those places you get to meet the buyer and the seller. We don't close separately. So in some cases, I guess it could be adversarial. In this case, it's kind of to really get to see somebody who's joyous about about the opportunity to be a homeowner in their own right. But I was still a little sad. I don't think I was sad because of the economics of it, but just sad to leave the home that I raised my children in, even though, again, we're not living there and haven't lived there in a hot minute. But still, a couple of tears. I think about the tissue.
Well, I think you guys bring up an interesting point about, and I know we've talked about this, but I just want to hammer it home since you brought up Odetta. When the soft data, which is bearish sentiment, people are worried. Not everyone, obviously. Applications are up again. Production is going to be up this year again. So the hard data hasn't shown that the housing market is suffering because of people who are worried about whatever's going on in DC. But that it is a thing. It's a trend they look for, and basically the phrase is, "We're waiting to see when the soft data shows up in the hard data," and it might not. So it may not. Like, China and U.S. cut a deal for 90 days. Maybe they're going to cut a bigger deal. UK, Saudi Arabia, stock market's ripping. Stock market's back at right under all-time highs within 3-4%. So then the wealth effect. People have money, which are homeowners or potential homeowners. They look at their 401ks, look at their stock accounts. It's better than it was 6 weeks ago. So then does the soft data start to get, okay, well, my 401k is not cratering. I'm feeling good. Maybe I go buy a house. And so the phrase is, we look for when the soft data shows up in the hard data. And so the soft data is still bearish, but the hard data is good.
Great. Look at that. That's like your proverbial mic
drop, right? You just go
That
off
wasn't his last word, guys. That's the real question.
12 minutes in, peace, we're done. Just kidding.
I always like to think of it. I like to think of our conversations and try to connect the dots to the feet on the street, right? The home ownership advisors, loan originators, loan officers, whatever we're going to call the role today. I happen to like home ownership advisor. And Dave Savage reminded me on a conversation that he had this week with Bruce Gerke. Dave and Kristen Messerly interviewed Bruce. Bruce is with JD Power, and Bruce was going through the 2024 readout on the origination satisfaction survey, but also talking about some of the early data they're starting to see in the 2025 surveying that they're doing. And during that conversation, Dave said something, and the way he said it really hit home. We all know that the average age of the first-time home buyers crept up to 38, I think was the last reported number by NAR last year. And the way Dave framed this was really fascinating. If you think about, and he's got First Home IQ, and they're really hyper-focused on getting in front of younger people in their financial life, like 18-year-olds, right? When they're first entering credit eligibility, right? And they're getting that first credit card, student loan, et cetera. And so if you think about an 18-year-old, and then you that's one end of it, and then you look at the other end, and the average age of a first-time home buyer is 38. You have this 2-decade-long process that people potentially are going through, where they're thinking about, and working on becoming prepared to buy and finance their first home. And I always try to think about it in the context of that home ownership advisor, that loan officer, the role that local community-based originator plays. And you have to be prepared as an originator to be involved in someone's life, especially a first-time home buyer, for an extended period of time. And the data from JD Powers just reinforces that is the best strategy for satisfaction and loyalty when you spend time with a consumer before they're before the point of sale. So I just thought it was fascinating to have it framed in like this 2-decade long process of somebody getting prepared. And I think loan officers today can position themselves much like Christie's organization, as credit unions position themselves with their membership as part of this financial solution around home ownership that doesn't start at the point of sale and end at a closing. It literally starts months, maybe years before someone's ready to buy, and it should span the consumer's entire home ownership experience. That was a mouthful there. Sorry.
That was a mouthful. I'll just chime in. So we can go in snake draft order since I went last, and then let the ladies go next. Yeah, I mean, the first time home buyer hunting, we talk about this theme of mortgage servicers versus originators. If we have a $2 trillion a year and 75% of it is purchase business, that local originator and realtor combo is still extremely powerful in winning the bulk of the business this year. And, I love obviously what you guys do, at FinLocker, and you mentioned a couple other partners out there, getting further up funnel, like deeper in the conversation earlier, helping people shape their credit, helping people get, mortgage ready, if you will. The down payment's still the biggest problem. Home affordability is still a problem. Lower rates helps. And I will say that whenever we see that 6.4% average rate out there, that's when things are like gangbusters. And we're in the high sixes. We touched a little above 7. We've been creeping down. 10-year treasuries coming down a little bit today, still in that 450 to 415 range. So, yeah, I mean, I love the approach, having conversations early, being on social media, having, more touches. I love it. I love everything you just brought up. And again, the bulk of the business still purchase business. So we got to be up funnel.
I think the bulk of the business is going to stay purchase business. I mean, you look at the charts that are out there with where people's interest rates are. They are, 90% of people are in the same band as Brian and Courtney with their super low interest rates, though we are seeing some movement in that. The MBA data that came out recently shows that, less than 20% of loans are refinances. And I don't see that changing dramatically. So you do have to figure out what your purchase strategy is. I have seen a shift over time, and KP, there's nothing like that local loan officer and that local real estate agent, but how does the person get to those people? I think that's what's changing in how that relationship works. It used to be, and we've talked about this before, it used to be that people came through the agent. People don't dream about their mortgage, they dream about their house, but finances are first and foremost in a lot of people's mind. And so that the path of folks getting to that amazing duo relationship is looking a little bit different. They're going through things like FinLocker. They're wanting to educate themselves. They're talking to their local bank or credit union. They're talking to a financial advisor, whatever that is. And so we have to think about what our strategies are to be involved in all those places where we need to meet the consumer where they are and help educate them in a way that lets them make good financial decisions.
I just have to shout out the Huron Valley school system here in Michigan. I have a high school senior in my life who is receiving 2 full credit hours in her senior year of high school, taking a class that's called personal finance. And her final project for exam, which she's doing right now, is planning for the next 5 years and then for the next 10 years. Down to, I get these random questions sometimes. Why do you lease your truck? Like, blah, 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 blah. The lease is bad for the, and I was just like, where? And then I'm like, oh yeah, personal finance. I got it. Right. And so, I mean, I think that those education tools are so important, whether it's FinLocker, shout out some of our mutual friend, Elizabeth at 10 at noon, like good education instead of YouTube education that's not always wrong and not always right, excuse me. Is important. But I mean, I think that the real question remains, does capitalism really care about that? And I think that becomes a head scratcher quite regularly, because I don't know that we see mortgage companies making those investments. And I think that we see very good tools and very good educational opportunities not being picked up with the volume and the energy that, maybe the people that see it more academically or more humanly, think that it should be. And that is a head scratcher to me too. And I think that probably is a place where credit unions can come in, right? And hopefully more. But at the end of the day, is it the biggest problem that the capitalists are facing? Question mark.
Well, it's where the incentives. And when you think about where the incentives are, and are people incented to be the hunter-gatherers? And when they do that, are they the ones who are only going to be more transactional? We've talked about for a long time in this industry about how you become the financial advisor and how you stay connected. But the fact is, our behaviors as an industry overall haven't really changed. We don't stay connected. We think about the next transaction, and are things like what's happening with Cooper Rocket pushing it to a way where, hey, if you sell that loan off to an aggregator, that they're going to recapture it. That CMG is going to do a great job if you sell the loan to them and it gets into Courtney's servicing portfolio, she's going to get that next deal. And what does that mean if you're an originator out on the street? Does that mean that you operate in a different way, and are you disincented from really creating that kind of value in somebody's life? And then does that fall to the big servicers? I think that there's some fundamental shifts occurring, and we have to really think about where we want to position ourselves as organizations, as an industry, and just as people.
And I think at the end, again, I'll go back to the individual loan officer, whatever company, whatever channel that they're originating in, right? In most cases, they're their own little micro business, right, in their community. And if they are in a channel or in a company that is a net seller of the MSR downstream, it shouldn't mean that they automatically never have a chance again, right, at doing business with that consumer. But I think as an industry and as a profession, loan officers, when I hear that term, it's very transactional to me. And I think if the mindset were to change and I were to become a home ownership advisor, so as long as Courtney owns a home, I'm going to be Courtney's home ownership advisor, right? And I may have originated the loan and the servicing may be somewhere else, but I'm going to be here for all of Courtney's questions and problems and solutions as it relates to home ownership in her current home and possibly the next home she wants to acquire. And I just don't think we've done a good enough job at scale from an origination perspective to position ourselves that way, where other financial professionals do that, right? Your CPAs and financial advisors position themselves as this kind of evergreen relationship.
That's an excellent point, but that's taking ownership of the model at the individual level.
Right. But I think, I get a little bit tired of hearing the gripes from the street of such and such stealing my customer. No. You did not do a good enough job to be memorable enough for that customer to think of you when there was another transaction. And so nobody stole anything, and so that mindset just you have to take ownership, to your point, Christy, of shifting how you present yourself and then how you do business and how you add value before, during, and after a transaction.
And I would say too, and you guys can agree, disagree with me because I'm speaking about your business, not my own, but the more that I've learned about the total sales community in mortgage individually, right, humans, the more I understand that the vast majority of the top 5% really are doing more and becoming the go-to human for outside humans to talk to. Yeah. They really are. I mean, the reason why they are the woman that Kevin is playing golf with right now is because they've made a broader investment, even if it's not them individually, right? Maybe they've built a team around them because they're not as good at that, right? Like there's different ways to look at it. But that and probably two realtor and builder relationships in the same way, but that's more B2B than B2C.
Yeah. Yeah. They put a process around that mindset, right? And it pays off.
Well, we're going to have more and more competitors. You think about fintechs getting in our space. You think about the money that's coming in to fund different things. Our cheese is always going to move. And we always have to continue to adapt and understand that the competition just gets more and more as we move into a more digitally enhanced or digitally optimized world. The number of competitors is more than just the people you can see in your neighborhood. And so you have to get better at what you do, and you have to get better at articulating your value proposition, or you will be left behind. And that is not the fault of the competitor stealing your customer, to your point, Brian.
Yeah, no, we make decisions and choices and have to live with the consequences, right? So last 5 minutes of our convo here. what any kind of, I know it was an action-packed week, but it seemed like, relatively speaking, it was a little calm on the news front, unless I missed a few things. Anything that you guys saw this week that we should share with the audience and point them in the direction to check it out?
I mean, the China deal is enormous. I mean, it's the biggest trading partner out there. I mean, that is enormous. And
Is
you
that
know,
this
all the
week?
peer.
I
What's
can
that?
think I said, was that this week? My days are just getting all clustered.
Well, the stock market has absolutely ripped. So this week, and again, creates a wealth effect. Yeah, I mean, if that's what, are we going into recession? Goldman Sachs reduced their recession outlook from 45% to 35%. Courtney brought up a good point. Job quitters aren't doing it as much because it's harder to find a job. So the labor market's, softening, but still somewhat tight, right? And so, these data points matter. I want to say something because I love what Courtney said about capitalism, right? I have this phrase that the secondary market is cold, heartless, and unforgiving. As we roll into the national cap markets and secondary conference in New York, I mean, money's cold, but capitalistically, it is profitable for us to educate borrowers up front and be their advisor. And I see a lot of that. And there's still some of that doesn't happen. And that just means they're weaker competition. And so the people that are winning are the ones that are serving borrowers at the local level from a trusted advisor standpoint. And so I that is actually capitalism, right? It is money making to serve borrowers in a better manner. And the competition is doing it. So we all have LOs that don't know the programs, don't know the guidelines, don't understand how to talk to borrowers, slam people into rates and programs that aren't the right fit. And it comes across, like you said, Brian, as a transaction. And so that's bad for that person's business and good for those that conduct business, quote unquote, the right way.
Love that. Courtney, Christy, any last words before we put a bow on it?
Just salt and pepper on what KP said, just to add an exclamation point at the end of it. I actually had 2 conversations with 2 people who are deeply passionate about humans and helping humans this morning. And that capitalist dialogue came into the framework. And if you are deeply passionate about human interest, human issues, you have to figure out a way, if you want money to back your ideas and your excitement, right? You have to find a way to figure out how that bleeds through to the bigger problem. And I think that this use case is a very, very good one. How, mortgage company X, do you have top LOs that look like this, that have this type of business? What types of investments do you need to make as an entity to retain this kind of top talent? Whether that's realtor experience, homeowner experience, or other, do they care about that at all? Or do they care about Leo, which, Ishbia was talking about earlier this week in terms of the AI investments that UWM are investing in. And every company needs to have a strategy around that. And so I think that there's room for human-centric innovation. But if you forget that we live in a world that is capitalistic, you're just going to be solving problems that people don't care about. And that's the harsh view of it. But if you can get your brain behind the math, all of a sudden, even the KPs of the world will get excited about your idea and your mission if you frame it in the cold, hard. It's Paula Abdul, right? She's a cold-hearted snake. Capitalist.
I mean, I don't know how you follow that, because that was pretty cool. I would just say that you have to be able to articulate it. You can't just say that you're doing it. You have to be able to articulate the problem that you're solving, how you're solving it, and how that is different and unique. And that you are going to be able to do it within X dollars of budget, within X timeline. These grandiose just ideas that you talk about don't get the funding. They don't get the support that you need to get it through. So practice your communication. If you are not a good, clear communicator, and in some cases I know that I am not, and that's an area to work on, I feel like your idea just goes nowhere.
Yeah, I just, since you brought up Leo, I want to just say something about it since you brought it up. I absolutely love that UWM called their loan estimate optimizer or Leo. Like, we have a brand new portal in our wholesale and correspondence channel we've been working on for over a year, and it's called Leo. Our gigantic trade booth and all of our T-shirts and all of our marketing is Leo.
Nice.
And with this, yeah, and so like with the scarcity mindset, we could be like, well, we have that thing copyrighted, whatever, but 6,000 loan officers just saw the name Leo, and just to put a bow on it, my dad died 4.5 years ago. His name was Leo. And that's why I named our portal Leo. And I wanted to give, and so, the biggest lender that's pushing the needle, that's growing the wholesale channel, that has a humongous following, is saying my dad's name everywhere. I love it so much. I cannot even, I'm serious. Like I love it. And what's going to happen is Rocket's going to come up with something to follow what UWM did. And the rest of the industry is going to try and do it. And that's what happens when, you've got the big dogs in the industry that set the pace. And I love watching the Detroit players up there, set the pace, and it makes, it's iron sharpening iron. So I love it. So, our portal that's been around for over a year in wholesale and has a full hard switch over at the end of the month for all new files. I've got T-shirts to show it. Pope Leo,
T-shirt.
I'm a Leo, my rising sign is Leo, my dead father's name is Leo. Like, Leo, let's go.
I love it. I just put a link to the Leo video teaser in the comments for everyone to check it out. So I never thought Paula Abdul would make it to our show, so that was pretty cool.
We are all from the 90s and 80s.
Always good to spend this Friday afternoon with you guys. We'll be back next Friday. Next Friday is Memorial Weekend. I think we're gonna carry on, right? We're gonna push forward and do we'll do the pre-holiday show. And with that, guys, that's the last word. A Chrisman Commentary Weekly show. We'll see you back here next week.
Sounds good. Bye, everybody.
See you in New York.